So it's my great pleasure to introduce Dr. Gabriel Kerner from a newly formed company called Alvalinks. He wants to talk about the road to full IP from an IT perspective, which I think is something that will build on our previous presentation. And it's something that is definitely very important for our industry to really have a good handle on. So welcome, Dr. Kerner.
Good afternoon, everybody. So it's been a long time that I have not done a face-to-face presentation, Corona and whatever else. So I'm quite happy to be back in actually presenting face-to-face. Today is not going to be, at least this half hour, is not going to be a technical presentation or a technological presentation. But I do hope that, there is something to learn from everybody. And if you feel at the end of the presentation that you have not learned, then I can dive with you into quantum computing, and then we'll all learn something new. What I want to do is do some comparison with the world of IT, typical enterprise, digital transformation, and compare this or do the parallel with the broadcast industry, the video industry, and where the things we see are becoming similar, the challenges, the resolutions, and the road ahead. So I'm Gabriel Kerner in the network, cloud computing, edge computing industry for about 2 decades now. And I'm working with Adi Rozenberg and Limor Turiel in the video transport industry also for about 2 decades at this point in time. So we are a young company called Alvalinks. Just to give you a short intro about what Alvalinks is about, and you will see how it correlates to the challenge that I'm going to talk to you about today. We are effectively building an expert system that allows us to abstract, to automate and assure live video transport over IP and over the cloud. And of course, we are VSF and RIST contributors with us here. Let me start with digital transformation. Digital transformation is a very big word. It kind of encompasses everything and anything within it. But at the core of it, it's the movement from, I would say, manual operation, step-by-step effort into a more agile mode of thinking. It means changing the way we do business. It means evaluating new, growing path forward, and also means scaling to an ultra-connected world for processes, for solutions, for mechanisms that are now changing almost on a daily basis. So I'm in the business for, at this point, 3 decades, right? So we started with the nascence of computers and moving and doing things with papers, with sending mail, real mail, not email, to people. And we have moved to a world where even email now is too slow for the pace of innovation. And we need to understand what does it mean for the impact of any organization, how they are going to behave and scale in this new world. And the first question that any business needs to ask himself is, what does my customers do? How does he think? What does he buy? Why does he want the things in a certain way? And these are evolving at a tremendous pace. So the consumer habit, the customer habits, the expectation are changing tremendously. A decade ago, we didn't have smartphones. 2 decades ago, we didn't have mobile phones. And today, they are just part of our daily life. And the way we think, the way we operate has evolved accordingly. And so our organization, the way we do enterprise needs to be adapted to this mode of thinking. And so at the same time that we need to understand those new technologies and the new processes, we need to actually update our own internal mechanism, legacy we call them. None of them are really legacy, we use them on a daily basis, but they are legacy technologies and methodologies, and we need to find ways to adapt them, modify them, and effectively migrate to a different mode of operation, reflecting the way that the real world now operates. It's been kind of very big words. So I wanted to give you an example. This is a company that does cement. They have 15,000 employees. They have about 3,000 sites worldwide. This has nothing to do with video. I mean, they pour cements for the roads, for houses, etc. And they do that worldwide. They have 3,000 sites. Some of the sites have very good internet connectivity. They have their own networks, which is built by one of the largest telco worldwide. But they also have smaller sites, which are barely connected. There is a local mobile connection. It's not even 4G. It's still in the 3G era. And they need to find a way to communicate with each one of their sites and actually bring the beton, the cement from wherever it is actually mixed into the place where it has to be delivered. Now, a few years ago, the time between the order to the delivery was about 3 hours. Now, anybody who knows what cement is knows that 3 hours is a very, very big deal in this world. Your cement is going to dry relatively fast. And so as a concept, Cemex understood that they needed to change the way they did business to bring the time, the average time from order to delivery from 3 hours to 20 minutes. And so this is a strategic decision, right? From this strategic decision, a multiple set of steps have been created in order to accelerate the way business is done, in order to accelerate business agility. And it included in their environment a full migration of all of their infrastructure, and I'm talking the digital infrastructure, from a legacy type of mechanism into a mechanism which allowed them to actually have direct connection, that allowed them to have on-site compute mechanism that allowed streamlined automation from the order processing, etc. And so a lot of application which were done manually was moved to computers. A lot of application which were computerized on large data centers were delocalized into cloud and into the edge devices, the edge sites. And of course, they started to rely on the internet as being a good mechanism of transport. I will tell you that about 10 years ago, I was with another very big company. I opened a new site. And opening the site was meaning, first and foremost, buying equipment for networking. So we had our switch, we had our firewall, we had our backup. And then we called the telecom company. We needed a dedicated line. We paid $5,000 a month just for that. And then there's a backup line, another $5,000. And then we needed a load balancer, calling to Cisco. And we had, just for a small office of 20 people, we had already 2 racks and $200,000 paid just to set up a connectivity mechanism. A few years later, everybody understands that this is not a scalable mechanism. If I want to open a new site, if I want to deliver cement fast, I need to rely on new technologies. And first and foremost, we can rely on internet. Now, internet is unmanaged, unmanageable, unpredictable, and complex to deploy, to operationalize. So once it has been understood, a flurry of companies decided to actually build mechanisms that would leverage the internet in order to make them operational, predictable, manageable. And this is called SD-WAN, so software-defined wide area networking. Some of you know what it is. Effectively, it's an automation mechanism that allows you to define your path, to control the path, to provision remotely. That means you don't need to be on site to set up the link. You can do it remotely. And that gives you workflows, automation, abstraction, everything necessary so that you can fast install it, fast instantiate, open a remote site within 20 minutes rather than within 20 days or sometimes months. And that integrates all of the functions that you needed to have into that. And the functions are typically security, backup, cloud integration, et cetera, et cetera. So one could almost say it's becoming kind of a superpower of the business agility by allowing you internet connectivity and intranet connectivity undergo wherever you are, however you are. The second big revolution has been, of course, cloud. As soon as you've been able to step away from the intra-cloud or the intra-organization network, and you can rely on the internet, then you can rely on a lot of processes that are built on the internet. And that means you can offload your compute from your internal localized environment into some magic place. And you can say, I don't need to deal with servers, I don't need to deal with hardware, I don't need to know how to compute, I just have those applications and I can run them on the cloud. Today, the internet or web pages are not just web pages. There is a whole lot of computation done behind that, and we tend to forget that. But somebody is doing this computation, and it is effectively what public cloud is all about. So if you can do that on web page, you can do that on every single application. And so that has been the starting of a gigantic movement that has led to the utilization of internet and public cloud as underlying mechanism for accelerating business. Now, all what I tell you is nothing new. It's just a kind of a history. But a very interesting point is just 10 years ago, none of this was existing. There was nothing. It was a bare land of nothingness. And today it's ubiquitous, it's obvious. Who doesn't do it this way, right? In the process, a lot of companies, a large ecosystem of companies, some of them you know, of course, have dealt with providing us connectivity over internet, secured connectivity, manageable operational connectivity over internet, compute over the internet, cloud computing, and this is just a few names that to give you kind of a concept. This market today is a gigantic market. The whole of the industry, literally tens of thousands of enterprises are migrating today from dedicated connectivity line into internet, from hardware-based internal data centers into cloud computing, and it enables a gigantic wave of innovation. Now a small company can actually open its door and create multiple sites on the go extremely fast without having to deal with the logistics of actually building a network and a connectivity mechanism for the computers. There is a slight hiccup into this unicorn story. It's quite complicated. And when I say it's quite complicated, I will repeat it. It's very complicated. So if today we as users, we consider connectivity to be so simple and ubiquitous, it's only because behind the scenes, there is a gigantic amount of company that made it simple for me to actually leverage and utilize. But if any one of you have entered ever the Amazon Web Service website and started to actually ask for compute power, he needed to become a DevOps, and there are not so many DevOps among us. I'm not a DevOps, and I tried to do that. And it's very easy to get lost in the technology, right? So, you need to have a cloud-native application. It has to be containerized. Sometimes it needs to be on Kubernetes, and sometimes it's a Docker, and a lot of words that most of us don't really understand, and we make believe that we do. I think it's a conundrum, right? So cloud made it easy for me, but at the same time, it made it very, very complicated. And so if I kind of expand from this very simple example into all of the challenges to move to utilizing internet for my enterprise need, utilizing the cloud for my enterprise need, I discovered that I don't have just one small problem. I have a gigantic amount of challenges which are very multidimensional. If my IT organization knew how to deal with creating a connection, which by the way was just calling my telecom provider, and if something was not working, what would I do? I would call the telecom provider, he would say sorry, and it would take him a month to resolve. Now, if I call my telecom provider and he tells me, you bought it, you sleep with it, figure it out. And now I need to call Cisco, and Cisco tells me, look, I gave you the best box in the world, I gave you SD-WAN, figure it out. And I'm calling your Amazon Web Services, and I tell him, look, my application doesn't work. And he tells me, look, I'm giving you compute power. The rest is your problem. And that creates a challenge for me as an organization. So now I have an IT department that needs to become experts in cloud computing, in public cloud, in internet, in SD-WAN, in multiple type of processes. On top of it, I need to add security. We are talking about the internet. Everybody knows how difficult it is to keep a secure environment. I need to have control, visibility. I was working a few years ago in an enterprise, and we were doing business with conference calls. So all of the organization, it was 30,000 people, 160 sites. We were doing meetings after meetings after meetings. I had about 10 meetings a day, all over video conferencing. And then one day it stopped working. And it stopped working for 30,000 people. And for 3 days in a row, nobody knew who to blame. And more importantly, nobody knew how to resolve. And 30,000 people were on holidays for 3 days. Business stopped completely. That's the reality that enterprises deal with on a daily basis. So most of the time it works, but sometimes, and when it doesn't work, when it breaks down for everybody. This is business critical stuff. So the IT organization understands very well it's business critical, it has to work, and they need a lot of management tools in order to make sure that it can work. And the first step they did was hiring a lot of DevOps, of course, right? Now, let me tell you what is DevOps. DevOps is a way to tell you, I automated it, but under the hood, there is a lot of things. So when I heard that the first time, it reminded me of the Mechanical Turk. For those who don't know the Mechanical Turk, there was a magician in, I think, 1685, something like that. So it's Middle Age times. He presented to the King of Austria a new Mechatron. So this machine is a fully automated artificial intelligence compute engine that can do chess with you. And so they brought this machine to the king, and the king played chess with them, and the machine always won, of course. But remember, it was 1685. Please check the date on Google. I'm not completely sure. And actually, nobody ever understood how it worked. So the magician was able to actually make a full tour across Europe. It was a big hit everywhere. And about 30 years later, once the guy died and the machine passed hand to some other people, some other magician, we finally understood how it worked. Under the machine, there was a whole mechanism where when you open the door, you could see, huge, mechanics and so on. And then you close the door, you open another door, you still see a lot of compute stuff, and then even a candle to, put energy into that and so on. But if you open all of the doors, you finally see that there is a place to sit. And there was a chess master sitting there, a small guy, that was moving the hand of the Mechanical Turk. So that's DevOps for you, right? So it's somebody behind the scenes that actually makes sure you can automate everything. And if it doesn't work, you have to call him in the middle of the night and make sure that it works. Automation has never been really simple. So yet another set of company stepped up, a huge ecosystem of orchestration, automation, abstraction, open source software, standardization that actually created around the initial mechanism of SD-WAN, SDN, network function virtualization, cloud computing, etc., that created around mechanism for automation, so process management, abstraction, technology configuration, etc., etc. Today, we can say quite confidently that in the typical enterprise world, about 50% of organizations have migrated successfully to the internet and to the cloud. We are in the midst of the gigantic transformation. And that means about 50% of companies start thinking like their customers do, meaning utilizing smartphone, thinking on the go, having fast communication mechanism, having short attention span. And that means they are in the middle of this digital transformation. 50% are still in the process of doing so, but we are very much well underway. We are supported by a host of companies and standards and open source mechanism to help us actually achieve that. Let's now move for a second and finally into the world of video. We all know that live video is the future, right? So anybody that's ever used Netflix or ever, used its telephone to watch TikTok knows that video is the future, and more importantly, live video is the future. Live video means, I would say, digital transformation at its extreme. It means instantaneous everything. And it's not unidirectional. You're going to provision video unidirectionally, but you will want interactivity in both directions. The technological world is waking up to that. They are creating right now cloud computing, edge computing mechanism. 5G is becoming deployed worldwide, and everybody intuitively understands that as soon as you will have those technology deployed, there will be a ubiquitous solution to actually enable live video across the world, everywhere, anywhere. And when we know that the attention spans increase tremendously when we talk live, that means monetization is much better. That means we all want to be there. And here's like the challenge. So, that means mostly I want to go back to internet. I want to use public cloud. I want to transmit video everywhere, anywhere from my smartphone into my smartphone. And I want it to work, right? As a consumer, as a utilizer, I need to know that I can rely on it. For us as an industry, we need to know how to make everybody using it rely on it. And there are quite some challenges with that. So, we can talk about the security, the deployment, the integration, but in reality, it's much more basic than that. I need to make sure that my latency stays minimal, it stays consistent. I need to make sure that my bit rate is manageable and actually is not going to be eaten up in the middle of it. I need to be able to automate the processes. I need to know that I don't want to know how it works under the hood. I don't want a mechanical Turk to make this happen. So that's, in a sense, what we need, right? So we need to build steps now to actually enable the whole of the industry to migrate to public cloud, to the internet, with the confidence that it works. And confidence starts with transparency. So you want a system that's going to automate it, but that's actually going to show you where the challenges are, how the challenges are being resolved, how fast they are being resolved. That tells you where the problem is, when it's going to be, if possible in advance. That's going to show you a mechanism for resolution so that you don't need to be a pool expert into that, so that you can actually utilize the resources and fast reach resolution. So you're going to need those exact tools for automation, for abstraction, for orchestration that are going to leverage the technology, hide it under a real artificial intelligence hood so that you can utilize it with high confidence. What I wanted to do today was not to tell you where the solution is, right? Because in a sense, the solution is obvious. What I wanted to tell you is that this has been resolved in other worlds already. We know how to do this. So as a digital world, we know how to do it. Now we need to bring this knowledge into the video, especially the live video world. It's going to be more complicated, of course. It's going to be more complex, more technology involved. But I think we have a strong basis. We have an ecosystem around us, which is already quite elaborated. We can leverage on that to build our next steps. And in a sense, I'm quite confident, right? So if I go back just to this picture, I'm quite confident this will happen. Of course, with our help, right? And I want to leave with this at this point. But I want to give one important statement. It's not going to happen by its own, right? So we are going to need to actually educate ourselves. What is cloud? We are going to need to understand that cloud is simple, but is not simple. And hoping for the best is generally not a recommended strategy. So we need to think this through. We need to build ourselves strategy and mechanism to do this migration in a way that we can believe in it, that we can be confident that we will be succeeding in the process. So with this, of course, there are quite a few caveats, right? Everybody talks cloud today. And I think maybe if I come out today with a bit of a controversial statement, it's very easy to talk cloud and say we are cloud. Making it requires expertise that is non-negligible. And I can only recommend to dive into that to make sure that actually we can trust and be confident in the solutions that are available. Thank you.
Thank you.